Welcome back to another quick tip. We have some more Microsoft team members with us today. I'd love to introduce you to again, Santosh, who is a PM at Microsoft, and Ashit, who's also a Microsoft engineering manager working through the Spark engine optimizations. I got to admit, gentlemen, I am absolutely loving our Spark notebooks. I love working in them. I like all the things that are coming out of your team. Everything is beautiful in notebooks. And now you're going to tell me I can do more with less. This is amazing. I'm very excited to hear what's going on today. Let's jump in.
Hey, Mike.
Santosh, over to you.
Doing well. Thank you so much for having us. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Awesome. So yeah, let's dive right in. Right. We released this last month. This was announced at FabCon. So we have been hearing from customers. It's super important to tailor your workloads. It's not going to be a one size fit all, right? You cannot go with one single configuration. The defaults can only be as good as it gets, but in scenarios where there are different data sets involved, different compute requirements, different SLA requirements, it makes it really hard for customers to tailor it. What we've done is we have introduced, we did a sneak peek of this at FabCon, and it got rolled out in the next week after that. These are property bags which are available now in all production regions. Customers should be able to use these. It's called resource profiles, configurations. What this basically allows a customer to do is they would be able to either use the existing pre-created defaults, where we have one for read heavy for Spark, read heavy for Power BI, and write heavy mode. Think of these as different modes of operation. If you're doing a bronze layer data ingestion, you could just go with write heavy because you would want to focus on data writes. You're just bringing in data from your different sources. You want to make sure that your Spark is your files that you're working with on Spark are smaller. It could parallelize. It doesn't have any data reorganization steps that's needed, which could cause performance overload on the ingestion side, but could make it much more better for consumption. So in say silver layer, you want to have your own custom configuration. Then the custom mode, which is more like a placeholder, you can have whatever you want. You can have ingest heavy, you could have write to conformance, you could have anything that you define, and you get to define the set of properties. So say, for example, there are 200 plus properties, and these could go up to hundreds of thousands of configuration combination values, right? For every Spark property. And not every engineer, every developer, or every team member in a data engineering team or data team is aware of all these configurations. So it always makes it harder for users to understand what these configurations mean, and they are super critical. They're gonna impact your overall data ingestion latency, the amount of compute that's needed. So what this basically simplifies is, as a data engineer, I could set this up for my team, add it to my environment, add it to my variable library, and you could just shift it. You could set up configurations for your bronze, silver, gold, for your data ingestion teams, for your data consuming teams, or your data product reporting teams, so that your data is getting the performance by default experience in scenarios where you want them to be optimized for, say, for example, both a hybrid scenario where you want it to be getting a good performance for writes, and also be getting good performance, low latency reads when you're consuming it from data warehouse or Power BI. You could enable optimize write, and you could maybe set your bins to something like 512 MB, or you could go larger for larger reading scenarios from Power BI. You could set it to 1 GB. if there are no reads going to be if there are not going to be any reads from these other reporting layers, you could just set it to like smaller values so that the files are a lot more smaller. You get more files for Spark executors to go parallelly execute against, right? So it gives them a lot of customization. So
So if, so if
that's
I can ask a quick question here. So like, you
yeah,
know, when if you go back to the prior slides, just
yes,
make sure we're kind of like unpacking this, right? Each of these profiles that we're showing here is actually a collection of multiple settings. It's not
yes,
just one, it's not like a single setting that I set. The idea is these fabric spark.fabric.resource profile is setting groups of parameters all at one time. So I only have to set one item and it automatically, again, this is the reason why I love this is because Microsoft is paying attention to what's happening in my Spark cluster. You guys are making decisions like, oh, well, these Parquet files should be up to 200 megabytes in size and not 1 gig, right? That changes how this looks. Or, you know, Microsoft understands how the semantic model pairs with the Delta table reads and loads. So these are multiple settings all being adjusted at one time. And now me as the data engineer, I don't necessarily need to dial in the extreme performance that I need. I can just generally start with these parameters, and only when I have really high currency needs or high read needs or high write needs, then I can go in and start changing and making my own profiles, which is the custom what you're speaking to, right? Is that just, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
unpack what you're saying here. Okay.
So I think at the very high level, like you
Yeah.
said, properties are just a bag, and you typically set
Yep.
them individually.
Yep.
And what everybody knows is, it's not you just don't change one property because there are related set of things you change. And so what we
Yes.
did was we created a system where you could change a group of properties together. And what
Love
we
it.
have done, like you said, is we've predefined several groups, which we think might be interesting to you,
Yeah.
with the allowance that you can then create 17 more groups if you want, and
Love
then
it.
choose them. And right, and like
Yeah.
Santosh said, you can now with defining those groups, and then in combination with things like variable support,
Mhm.
you can configure this according to the environment however you want it
Love it.
dynamically. And remember, this is not just performance configurations, because this can be any Spark property. And as you know, Spark properties are just strings. So
Yep.
you can put connection strings in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can declare whatever you want
Yes.
in here, and it will work, because basically that's the whole point. All we do is take this bag of properties and just apply them individually, and that's it. So it's a
Love
convenience
it.
feature, it's a syntax feature,
Yeah.
but in combination with our predefined properties, like you mentioned, it
Yeah.
helps you create great starting points, because we know one setting does not satisfy everyone.
And again, I'll be honest with you. I think the majority of the data engineers coming to Fabric are Power BI individuals that are learning to become a data engineer. So our audience isn't necessarily studied, tuned, like really focusing in on Spark and its amazing performance capabilities. We're just kind of showing up and saying, can I just write a notebook? Can I read and write data? Like initially, that's all I care about until things start falling over or I get really big data or like, and then I'll take the time to learn more of what's going on. So I think this is an amazing feature to bring the technical level way down for beginner data engineering in Fabric. This is an amazing feature.
And that's, like you said, right? It's that audience which we want to make it easy for as well, because
Yeah.
you can go read the manual. I can ask you, everything's documented, and
Yep.
I know we have co-pilots and so on, but it still
Sure.
takes time. So
Yeah.
the beauty of this is, you list all your configuration settings right there.
Yep.
It's interactive in the notebook, and you just have to choose one, right? And so it's
Wonderful.
it's saving you all that experimentation and creating a easy starting point, but of course still configurable.
And again,
So
it's like also moving from, say, for example, in this case, the custom
Yep.
one, right? Like what Ashit was referring to. We have like query listeners or like some logging agents that you've added. You could have like 15 other properties that you're team would want. But you know,
Yep.
it's going to increase the number of touch points when you go from like dev, test to prod. You don't have to like mirror all these changes. You could just up level this to just one single property and just convert that, right? So it also
Really
like
like it.
reduces errors that you could run into when you're managing these configurations, and each of these configurations could have impact on your overall SLA or like your reliability of your jobs.
And remember, this is
Awesome.
just a macro, right? So
Yeah.
if you now have two groups of properties, and in one case you want to apply one, you first set one,
Yep.
and then you set another because it's just a macro. It just applies them in serial order. So there's no magic here. It's just bundling things together.
Love it. Awesome.
With that, actually, I want to like there was a very interesting point that Ashit brought up, and it by responding to your question, right? It's more in terms of the performance by default experience, because most of the users are like trying to serve the data, and they're from Power BI background. They're now using Spark notebooks, so um, they're starting to ingest data, right? And for we had initially enabled these configurations for uh, making the data preparation optimized for read scenario. Okay, that was using
Mhm.
the uh, read heavy for Power BI configuration, or the defaults that we saw like few minutes back. What we have been hearing from customers is they want more control. They're like, hey, give us these options, we would size them. And so, what we have done is, as part of introducing these profiles, we have also, for the new workspaces, we have made it uh, we have made the change to the write heavy configuration. So we would not be setting your optimized write is disabled, your V-order is disabled. Optimized write partition enabled alone is true, so that the code path is enabled. So if your data has partitions, it still is optimized for your subsequent layers of data transformation that you do for, say, your silver layer, if you're doing a medallion-based architecture, or if you're having
Mhm.
a conformance layer, and then you're reporting from there, right? But
Yep.
now with this, what we're doing is all the new work, we again, this change is not going to impact your existing workspaces. So just to make sure
Yeah.
that users don't freak out,
Yeah.
your existing workspace is not going to like it's not going to impact. But what we're seeing is from new workspaces, and users can again go and change it if they want to in their existing workspaces, if they want to like tune
Yep.
it for their write heavy scenarios. But what you're seeing is from a lot of enterprise users, we are hearing a lot of positive feedback where they're able to see almost like 6 to 7x gains for their write heavy scenarios. And again, now what they're doing is, for the conformance and read heavy layers, they're going and fine tuning this based on their requirements, based on the concurrency scenarios that they receive from, say, Power BI or any other reporting layer or interactive querying scenarios. So
Mhm.
this is one update that I would want to make sure that users are aware. And this is only impacting like new workspaces, but the perf gains, I think users should be able to test this out, and they should also be able to like compare it if they have like benchmarking environments in their workspaces.
And I want to just call out here a note here is again, this is definitely the right approach. Most of my notebooks, as I begin working in Fabric, are getting data to the lakehouse. That's what I spend a lot of time on. And I would argue most of my notebooks are going to be working to get data to the lakehouse. So write heavy, I think, is the right approach. I just want to be very note heavy, worth it as well here, letting users know this is awesome. Be aware your new workspaces may look a little different or perform slightly different than your old ones. And this being said, if you know you're going to be using tables in semantic models, you will likely need to adjust the notebooks that take that final step to that final table that's going to go into the Power BI notebooks as well. So I just want to call out there that you will likely want to think about that, or at least be aware of it, learn how to do it when you get to the create tables for Power BI reports, because that would be one you want to optimize for Power BI read heavy. That's what you want to optimize for on the other side when you're ready to get those tables into Fabric or use directly tables kind of things.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, so these are the things that I wanted to touch on in terms of the write heavy configurations. Moving on, this is a really cool feature. And I think Ashit will also be really excited to share some of really cool performance enhancements that we are also shipping as part of this. So
Yeah.
automated table statistics. So just to give you a high level, and I'll let Ashit also like take you into the details. And so tables, when they're created, and you're trying to like query them at the end of the day, you want to like have some kind of guidance to the query optimizer on our engine, where
Mhm.
by providing additional statistics, more in terms of uh, min, max, the overall histogram or HLL index values, uh, what we are seeing is we are able to efficiently read, perform operations in terms of like data skipping of your files, your overall queries, or your execution plan is completely improved on all stages, right? So, in multiple scenarios from larger customers, we are seeing greater gains as part of private preview, where up to like 40 to 50% gains
Wow.
across their queries, which is very, very interesting. And what this also does is, at the end of the day, the goal is very simple, right? As you rightly called out, it's um, customer, all they care about is how fast their jobs finish and how less they could pay for their compute. So it's
Yep.
helping them achieve the overall price performance goals that using Fabric.
This, I can't stress this enough. The fact that we're now getting like 40 to 50% gains on things, these are crazy amounts of like improvements. Like, so I'm very, very excited about this, and just how easy you're making this to turn on and use and let the system just optimize itself. This is massive for me. And as a user or consumer of this just makes me more, yes. You may see a weird phenomenon right now is you're getting hit on CUs. Like, so Microsoft has, how Microsoft views the world of Fabric. Each team has a certain amount of compute units they want to get, build for their workload, right? But the goal here is not to get more CUs, it's to create a great user experience. And these examples here, you're actually reducing the amount of CUs that you're going to be billing back to customers, which for me as a customer is wonderful. And I really want to call out the fact that you're spending the time and the effort to make this more efficient for me, because when I look at the scope of what you're doing here compared to other tools in the market, being competitive here is a direct win to me, the user, the consumer. And I'm going to build 100% more data flows now, or pipelines and notebooks, and I'm going to be very comfortable building on top of this, knowing Microsoft's got my back and they're optimizing for me, the user. So I love this. This is a great story.
That's amazing to hear. And one thing that I would want to call out before handing out to Ashit is, as part of the initial release of this feature,
Mm-hmm.
new tables will automatically get these extended statistics. For
Awesome.
existing tables, users would have to like run these analyze commands so that they could recalculate the statistics.
Yeah.
So our engine gets all the correct values as the table is refreshed, and hence they get the overall gains
Love
in
it.
terms of performance, right? So that's, and but again, we are still working on like automatically recalculating or computing these statistics for all existing tables, but that's
Mm-hmm.
something that will be coming soon in the upcoming weeks. It's not going to be available for the first version that's going out like next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Sounds
think I
fair.
think the important caveat here is if you do writes with Spark,
Mm-hmm.
and you create a table with Spark and you continue to update it with Spark in Fabric, then you
Yeah.
get the statistics. So because we
Love it.
have the lake
Oh,
house, there can
yes.
be other engines which can be
Yeah.
updating this,
Sure.
and so that's a big caveat because we can't control like you're using a third party app and writing into a table and suddenly like, hey, where are my statistics?
Mm-hmm.
So this is to be very clearly, this is only when you do the write through the Spark engine can we go and create stats and update stats. Now you can always run something outside and then
Yes.
run a stats refresh from the Spark engine, and then you will get these statistics.
So I want to call out the note here. So our listener audience knows me and they know what we talk about. I brought it up before we were even talking about this. We talked about Javen's paradox,
Yeah.
the idea that if you bring the cost down, you think people would consume less, but they don't. They actually consume more. So I think Javen's paradox is going to work in your favor here for getting you. Yes, we're reducing per job CU usage, but we're going to see in general a proliferation of more jobs appearing, which will easily compensate for the performance gains we're getting on this single job. So I do, but again, the idea is I'm still doing more work. The goal of this is let me do more data engineering on top of the system, make it easier for me to get it done faster. I love this. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ashit, go back to you.
No, absolutely. And I totally agree with you there. This is something which we are very mindful of. We do understand that budgets are stretched.
Yep.
People are asking for more and more productivity, and just making sure that dollar or whatever currency you are goes the
Yeah.
extra mile or kilometer
Yes.
is
Yep.
important.
I love it. Extra kilometer.
Right?
Let's do kilometers. The US is very weird with their units. The whole other world uses kilometer. Let's do the extra kilometer.
Let's go the extra kilometer, right?
I love it.
So absolutely. So yeah, that's a big caveat. And what that dichotomy actually highlights what we want to speak about is we could have made a choice to say, hey, you run your job and then we update the stats. And what we wanted to avoid was, well, all these extra steps, the orchestration required for that, and things like those.
Yeah.
The idea here is if you use Spark as your main ingestion engine,
Yep.
all of these things come for free. So I think one of the things I wanted to dive into, if you go to the previous slide, the biggest thing we did here, which really makes a huge difference in terms of the performance work, is this distinct values at the table level. That's something which I wanted to call out. And the reason that is important is because it is materially making a difference in the statistics we get for deciding whether to push an aggregate or what kind of join to select. and
Oh,
and
yeah, that makes
these
sense.
performance gains, we say 45% performance gains, but really it could be that depending on your data set, if your data set, without this, it was very hard to say, let's say I had 1 million rows and I had only 10 distinct values, or I had 500 million distinct values. And so
Yeah.
for some of these cases, what starts happening is the moment you get a better idea about the number of distinct values, that now you can say, instead of doing a shuffle join, which we had talked about previously, right, you could now do a broadcast join. And
Yeah.
then not only that, you could now push things like Bloom filters in because of the broadcast join. And so it's not that, some of these cascading effects of performance,
Yeah.
when you actually have good statistics, are very, very, very important. And
Love
so,
it.
just want to call that out. So sometimes people feel like, why do you want to do this with every write operation? No, it actually helps a lot, because there might be that one query which is turns out to be it's a cross join because we can't figure out what the relationships are, and then suddenly you push filters down everywhere and it goes like 20 times.
Forever.
So
Yeah, exactly.
this is a pretty neat thing we did there. And again, wanted to call out the team for doing this. We have tried and paid attention to the overhead of collecting statistics. So we have pushed this down a lot. And so comparable to other systems, this is what we have seen is the way we collect statistics is cheaper than we've seen other competitive systems do. So that is
Love
a
it.
great thing.
Yeah.
But like with everything else, you can disable this if you want to.
Sure.
And so it would be great if folks can compare A/B performance and tell us, how much they like this, because we think they really like this.
So
Yeah.
I think what Ashit was referring to is it's kind of interesting, right? So I was testing this. And folks on my team were also testing this. I think it was kind of interesting. So let's say Databricks, right? Databricks uses this compute statistics, but it uses the
Yes.
serverless compute. Okay.
Yep.
But the interesting part here is the serverless compute has a different cost and increases the. If you look at the overall price performance,
Yep.
it increases the overall cost for your query execution right? And whereas in this case,
Yes.
as Ashit mentioned, the computation of statistics is also made super lightweight. It doesn't add additional overhead for your overall job runtime.
Sure.
But again, given that Spark, uh, the price of Spark, we talked about the serverless option last, like I think 2 weeks
Yep.
ago with Chris,
We did.
uh,
Hmm.
and with native, without having any additional cost, the overall price performance advantage becomes much more interesting.
Compelling.
Uh,
Yeah. Love it. Comes out of the box now. This is great. So as we move forward here, you might have a couple more talking points, but I do want to also call out here as well. Everything we're talking about here for performance gains, we're also talking about so there was another announcement that came out at Fabric Conference that I'm extremely excited about, which is materialized views. And people think, oh, materialized views is just writing down a view down a disk. No, no, no. It's way more than that. We have another video that we did previously around what this means to us, and it's orchestration, it's sequencing multiple tables together. I see these optimizations pairing very well with materialized views, right? I'm now stringing multiple table creation together. I'm now getting all these table statistics automatically. The joins and the Spark engine is then more intelligent around how it builds these multiple tables all the way through my pipeline. Correct me if I'm wrong here. This is a double win now with materialized views and this all working together.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely. Yeah, we're taking every individual part of the engine, every individual part of the user workflow and optimizing it, right?
Love it.
So you're seeing
Yeah.
the read
Cool.
performance, you're seeing the write performance. We talked about read performance with Knee, I think last 6 months ago. Now we're focused on the write performance, the statistics calculation. All of
Mhm.
these are incrementally adding up. And I know at some point of time, we'll probably hear from users who will run their actual workloads and tell us, yes,
Mhm.
this was X times cheaper. We have a number in mind where we know it's X times cheaper, but
Yeah.
I would love to hear from folks to
Yeah.
see what they see.
And this is your readout right now, kind of general, just as general stats that you guys internally are testing for writer, row, table, and then the delta snap. I mean, these are big numbers. I mean, you're not putting up like 10% more. These are 27, 45% more improvements. I mean, this is stuff that if again, me as an expert in the space, to other users of Fabric and Spark, take note. You need to be learning about this. This is something that will greatly improve your performance of your notebooks.
Yeah. So one of the things when we announced native execution engine, we said is, hey, we're doing this in parts. We optimize for read performance and wait for it. Write performance improvements are coming. And so one of the big things in write performance was, so you may be aware that we integrate with Gluten and VLOX, and out of the box, these engines did not necessarily support Delta very well. And you may also know that the open source version of Delta isn't necessarily the most optimal thing that can exist. So we had to go do a lot of work to integrate these engines with Delta. We open sourced a bunch of those things. And then what we did was basically looked at query plans, and then took a hard look and said, where's all the time going? We were fairly disappointed that the performance of the open source integration wasn't there. And so we did quite a few things. And in essence, they boil down to the two things we have here, right? We eliminated a whole bunch of column to row conversions because, sorry, it's actually the other way around, row to column conversions in the right side.
Yeah.
And so we try to create a direct path to disk, which does not involve conversions. We eliminated a whole lot. There are a few which we think will add more value in the coming months. And so that has definitely made the whole write path faster. In addition to that, we took a hard look at the writers, the storage drivers, and we said where are other opportunities to just improve this thing. So um, this is what you will start seeing. So this is rolling out now. So in combination with, so to take advantage of this, you obviously have to turn on the native execution engine, which makes your read path faster. You turn these on, it makes your write path faster. And so a very easy test for someone to do is to go and do a simple table copy read write scenario, right? Existing table, and just read it and then write it out. And what you see is when you turn on native execution engine, it's like way faster. And it's like you said, it's not 2% faster or 10% faster. It's multiple times faster.
Yeah.
Um, the last one we have here, which is kind of with that Delta snapshot creation. So again, like we said, when we looked at the open source Delta implementation, we realized that it's not the most performant one. And one of the tricks there is, because Delta is a what is called a log structured table,
Hmm.
you have to read the metadata first. You have to create these snapshots before you have an idea of what files actually belong to your table. And
Yes.
that process is expensive. And so Delta has these tunables where you can say you can do a checkpoint and then subsequent snapshots and so on and so forth. But ultimately, you still have to combine all of these things.
Hmm.
Um, and what we realized, and actually you might know this, Miles Coles, a great friend of ours, he pushed us, hey, there's something you can do better here. He said, fine, we were not focused on that. And we took up this performance optimization earlier than we wanted to because he really advocated for it. And what it does is basically says, if you have very little work, it makes no sense to go do a Spark job for everything. So we just do
Hmm.
this, and we call this the driver mode snapshotting. And this really improves performance a lot because now you don't have the overhead of starting a distributed job, collecting data again. It's all there. And so what this does is essentially makes the same example I gave around taking an existing table and then turning it around and writing it back again. If you
Hmm.
go through that part of the work is to go create a snapshot because you know how many files exist. This makes
Yep.
all of that. So all of these together add up to a ton of gains. So by turning on the native execution engine, which Santosh has reminded us does not come with any additional charges,
Yes.
will improve not only your performance but also your price performance because it's free. So
I love it.
really, really, looking forward to folks on your channel trying this out, giving us the feedback, telling us,
For sure.
hey, you missed this case,
Yeah.
so we can go fix all of those things. But right now, we think it's in a really good spot where the things which we had turned off before because we said we are working on it, we're ready to say, hey, go try this out, please.
Love
This is
it.
working well.
Excellent. Well, this is amazing. Any other slides, Santosh, for your side, or is this kind of the wrap here?
No, I think we touched upon all the scenarios, right? So just to highlight the key points that you and Ashit mentioned,
Yeah.
with a lot of other features, say for example, like end-to-end orchestration being simplified from materialized views and shortcut transforms, and having like all these performance optimizations, we want to make sure that users are aware, and also with the right optimized defaults, which get
Yeah.
you like going with the best performance for your data engineering scenarios. It becomes super important for customers to know that they would again, we have not enabled native execution engine by default, so you have to go to the environment or
Correct.
set the Spark property spark.native.root set to be native.enable set to true
Yep.
in the session level or at the environment level, or
In the
and also,
notebook too.
yes, you could do it at the notebook or the Spark job
Yeah.
definition. You could make it as a default environment for your workspace so that it gets applied in all the jobs. It could be a materialized view job, it could be a pipeline job, it could be an API-based Libby execution, so that it runs in the most
Sure.
optimized form, because it's not going to cost you anything, right? It's just going
Yeah.
to run in a vectorized layer. It's going to give
Yep.
you all the performance gains that Ashit was talking about in both read and write scenarios. So it's super, super important for customers to try this out. And we are actively looking for more feedback. If there are more operators that you're running into which
Sure.
are running on the regular JVM, because with monitoring view, you'll be able to clearly see, okay, hey, I have these operators. They are not
Mm.
running on native layer.
feel free to reach out to us. Would love to understand. Would love to hear more feedback so that we could. You guys, the user feedback drives the priority for us, right? So if you could
Love
tell
it.
us, oh, hey, I'm using a lot of JSONs, then that becomes the top priority for us, right? So looking for a lot more feedback around this. And thank you so much.
No
Mike.
problem. Well, I'll say this. If you want to get a hold of Santosh or Ashit, the LinkedIn profiles are down below. Let them know if you have any feedback there. I think we definitely hit us up in the comments of this video. If there are things that you're doing that you want to comment about, or you things you're testing and you want to have some feedback around, let us know in the video. Santosh is on the channel often, and he looks at the stats of the videos and how they're doing and performing. So he's there quite frequently. I'm looking at it all the time. Other places you can find us on Reddit. There's actually a really good R Reddit thread. It's the Reddit thread Microsoft Fabric, and there's also another really good one for R Power BI. So those are some very active threads that Microsoft looks at. I look at them. People in the community are actively engaging there. You also have the opportunity to go to the Microsoft community pages. Microsoft community has a bunch of pages there. We can ask questions to other members of the community, discuss things about your Fabric environments as well. So I do want to encourage you, listeners, thank you very much for attending today. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I know your time is valuable. I'll get you out of here on time to run you over to your next meeting. Thank you so much. We'll see you for another great session, another quick tip in the future. But don't say we never gave you anything. This is going to save you money just by watching and listening to this episode. So we hope this will save you some CUs and you can go build some more Spark things later. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to everybody joining in.
Thank you.